Mr. Kerr.
I, of course, respect the sincerity of Bill Kidd in bringing this motion, as I do all who have spoken. But I begin by deploring the suffering of innocent people, Palestinian and Israeli alike. The images from Gaza are harrowing. The loss of innocent life, the displacement of families, the deep trauma inflicted on civilians are tragedies that weigh heavily on us all. No one could be indifferent to such human suffering. But let me be absolutely clear. I do support the right of the State of Israel to defend itself from terrorism. I believe that Douglas Ross was right to highlight the atrocities of the 7th of October. And I hope that I'm not alone in being resolute in opposing Hamas, a violent, prescribed terrorist organisation whose actions have inflicted unimaginable suffering on both Israelis and Palestinians. This Parliament cannot ignore the reality that Hamas is not a partner for peace, but a death cult funded by Iran, committed to the total destruction of Israel and utterly indifferent to the suffering of every people, the very people, I beg your pardon, it claims to represent. I share concerns, of course, about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. That is why I asked and have asked questions about the nearly £1.5 million of Scottish Government aid committed to Gaza over the last 18 months, aid that was intended to be delivered, as we discovered in our committee, in the form of cash and vouchers to those in need on the ground. But I have raised grave concerns that this well-meaning, well-intentioned support risks being hijacked by Hamas to sustain its control and prolong the suffering of civilians. Of course.
Polly McNeill.
Thank you. The member said that Israel had the right to defend itself. I wondered if how the member feels about the deliberate starvation of the Palestinian population in Gaza. I said in my contribution there is evidence, eyewitnesses, that Israel has actually shot at people queuing up for aid. And the Haaretz newspaper, it's just common knowledge now that Israel's actually paid armed gangs as well to cause chaos at these humanitarian so-called food agency distribution centres. I mean, surely the member is not justifying that?
Stephen Kerr.
Don't justify any action that causes the suffering of civilians, but I believe that Polly McNeill was very wise to couch her description of these events in terms of reports. And this is a war being fought through violence, but also through propaganda. There is an abundance of evidence of that propaganda and how potent it is. We all long for peace, but peace demands clarity and honesty. Calls for a ceasefire must be accompanied by calls. I will do, yeah.
Cara Morgan.
Thank you. I'm wondering if the member would, like some of the rest of us, call for international journalists to be allowed into Palestine to see just if we can get reporting accurately of what is happening.
Stephen Kerr.
I think the situation, and I think the member will appreciate this, is very complex on the ground in Gaza. And I think we would all like to see some honest reporting of what is actually transpiring. But if I may return to what I was saying about calls for a ceasefire, they must be accompanied by calls for the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages still held by Hamas. And a two-state solution must be grounded in mutual recognition. And I hope members will appreciate and accept that Hamas fundamentally rejects the recognition of the State of Israel. And I will say this, I do not believe there can be equivalence between a democratic state acting in self-defence and a terrorist organisation using civilians as shields. That is not nuance, it is moral clarity. Let's also be clear about the recognition of a Palestinian state. Statehood cannot be seen as a solution in the face of ongoing violence. It must be the outcome of a genuine peace process, one that begins with the rejection of terror and the embrace of coexistence. Presiding Officer, until such time as Hamas is disarmed and dismantled, and until Palestinian leadership is willing to live in peace alongside Israel, lasting peace in the Middle East, I'm sorry to say, would appear to remain tragically out of reach.